The blizzard had swallowed the world whole, turning everything into a howling void of white and cold. When Zachary Lancaster spotted what he first thought was just another snowdrift along the trail outside Red River, Texas. It was late January 1883, and he had been riding through this God-forsaken storm for the better part of 3 hours, trying to get back to his ranch before the weather turned deadly. But something made him pull his horse to a stop, some instinct that told him that particular drift was different from all the others. He dismounted, his boots sinking into snow that shouldn't exist this far south, and approached cautiously. What he found made his heart nearly stop. A woman lay curled against a fallen cottonwood tree, her lips blue, her skin pale as death itself. Her dark hair was matted with ice and snow, and her clothes, though once fine, were torn and inadequate for this freak storm that had caught everyone by surprise. Her eyes fluttered open as he knelt beside her, and those eyes were the most striking shade of green he had ever seen, even dulled by approaching death as they were. "Leave me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the screaming wind. "Just leave me here. Let me die." Zachary felt something fierce and protective surge through his chest. "Not a chance in hell, madam," he said, already shrugging out of his heavy coat and wrapping it around her shaking frame. She tried to push him away, but her movements were weak and uncoordinated. "You don't understand," she said, her words slurring slightly. "I want to die. I have nothing left, no reason to live." "Well, that is just too damn bad," Zachary replied, lifting her into his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. She was far too light, he realized, probably hadn't been eating properly for days or even weeks. "Because I have got other plans for you, and they do not include freezing to death in a Texas snowstorm." She tried to protest again, but consciousness was already slipping away from her. Her head lolled against his shoulder as he carried her to his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Ranger who stood steady despite the howling wind. Getting both himself and the unconscious woman onto the horse took some maneuvering, but Zachary had been ranching since he was old enough to walk, and he managed it. He settled her in front of him, holding her securely against his chest with one arm while guiding Ranger with the other. The ride back to his ranch took another hour that felt like an eternity. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes muttering things he could not quite make out over the wind. Once she said something about betrayal, another time she whispered a name that sounded like Matthew. Zachary just held her tighter and urged Ranger on through the blinding snow. When the ranch house finally came into view, relief flooded through him. It was not much, just a simple 2-room cabin with a small barn, but it was solid and warm, and right now it looked like heaven itself. He dismounted carefully, pulled the woman down into his arms again, and kicked open the door. The inside was blessedly warm. He had banked the fire before leaving that morning, and it was still giving off heat. He carried the woman straight to his bed, the only bed in the cabin, and laid her down gently. Her clothes were soaked through, and he knew he needed to get her warm and dry immediately, or she would die anyway, storm or no storm. "Madam," he said, even though she was unconscious, "I apologize for what I am about to do, but it is a matter of life and death." He worked quickly, removing her wet outer garments with the clinical efficiency of a man who had doctored injured animals his whole life. He left her undergarments on for modesty's sake and wrapped her in every blanket he owned, then stoked the fire until it roared. For the next several hours, he worked to save her life. He heated water and used warm cloths to gradually raise her body temperature. He rubbed her frozen fingers and toes, trying to restore circulation. He made weak broth from dried beef, and managed to get some spoonfuls down her throat during her brief periods of semi-consciousness. Through it all, She kept telling him to let her die, to leave her alone, that he was wasting his time. And through it all, Zachary refused. He did not know this woman. He did not know her name or where she came from or what had brought her to this place of such desperate hopelessness. But something in him could not, let her slip away. Maybe it was simple human decency. Maybe it was something more. He did not let himself think too hard about it. Night fell, and the storm continued to rage outside. Zachary dozed in his chair by the fire, jerking awake every time the woman stirred or made a sound. Around midnight, her eyes opened fully for the first time, clearer now, though still filled with a deep sadness that made his chest ache. "You should have left me," she said, her voice stronger now but still hoarse. "Well, I did not," Zachary replied, standing to check her forehead for fever, "and I will not apologize for it." "You don't know what you have done," she said, tears beginning to slide down her cheeks. "You don't know what I have been through, what I have done." "Then tell me," he said gently, pulling his chair closer to the bed. "Tell me your name at least." She was quiet for so long he thought she might refuse. Then finally she whispered, "Miranda. Miranda Sanders." "Well, Miss Sanders," Zachary said, though he noticed no wedding ring and wondered about the misdesignation. "I am Zachary Lancaster. This is my ranch, such as it is, and you are welcome to stay here as long as you need to recover." "I don't want to recover," she said, but there was less conviction in her voice now. "I don't want anything anymore." "What happened to you?" Zachary asked, his voice soft. Miranda closed her eyes, and for a moment he thought she would not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, emotionless, as though she was recounting someone else's story. "I was engaged to be married. Matthew Shaw, son of the wealthiest rancher in Red River. Everyone said I was so lucky that I was marrying above my station. My father was just a shopkeeper, you see. Dead now, along with my mother. Cholera, 2 years back. Matthew was handsome and charming, and he said he loved me. I believed him." She paused, and Zachary waited, sensing there was more. "The wedding was supposed to be 3 weeks ago," she continued. "I had my dress, had everything ready. The whole town was invited. And then, the night before the wedding, I found him with my best friend, Sarah Miller. They were in his father's barn, and they were laughing about me, about what a fool I was. Sarah said she could not believe Matthew was actually going through with marrying me when everyone knew he only wanted my father's shop property, which I had inherited. Matthew said it did not matter, that he would marry me and then find a way to get the property and be rid of me." Zachary felt anger kindle in his gut. "Those low-down, miserable—" "I ran," Miranda cut him off. "I just ran. I did not confront them, did not tell anyone. I just could not bear it. Could not bear the humiliation, the betrayal. I ran out of town, started walking, did not care where I was going. That was 3 days ago. I have been walking ever since, barely stopping. When the storm came, I just sat down. I thought it would be easier this way, clean, no more pain." "Miss Sanders," Zachary said, and his voice was fierce now, "those people are not worth your life. Do you hear me? They are nothing but cowards and liars, and if you let them win by dying out there, then they will have taken everything from you. Your future, your happiness, your very life. Do not give them that power." Miranda's eyes met his, and for the first time he saw something other than despair there. Confusion, maybe. A flicker of something that might have been hope. "Why do you care?" she asked. "You do not even know me." "I do not need to know you deserve better than freezing to death in a snowstorm," Zachary replied. "Every person deserves better than that." She studied him for a long moment, and he felt oddly exposed under her gaze. He was not a complicated man. He was 32 years old, had never been married, spent his days working his small ranch and his nights alone in this cabin. He was tall and broad-shouldered from hard work, with dark hair that was always a bit too long and gray eyes that his mother had always said could see right through to a person's soul. He was not particularly handsome or charming. He was just Zachary, a simple rancher trying to make an honest living. But something in Miranda's expression softened as she looked at him. "Thank you," she whispered finally, "for not leaving me." "You are welcome," he said gruffly, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "Now you need to rest. The storm should blow over by morning, but you need to stay warm and recover your strength." "Where will you sleep?" she asked, suddenly realizing she was in his bed. "The chair will do me just fine," Zachary assured her. "Would not be the first time." Miranda looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her again. Her eyes drifted closed, and within minutes, her breathing had evened out into sleep. Zachary sat in his chair and watched her, this mysterious woman who had stumbled into his life with a broken heart and a death wish. He wondered what tomorrow would bring, whether she would still want to die when the sun came up, or whether she might find a reason to live after all. The storm did blow itself out by morning, leaving the world outside blanketed in white. Zachary woke stiff and sore from sleeping in the chair, his neck protesting every movement. He stoked the fire back to life and started coffee, the familiar routine comforting after the strange night. Miranda was still sleeping, her face peaceful in a way it had not been while she was awake. The color had returned to her cheeks, and her breathing was deep and steady. She would live, physically at least. The question was whether her spirit would recover as well. He went out to tend to Ranger and check on the few cattle he kept close to the barn. The snow was already starting to melt under a bright winter sun, turning everything into a muddy mess. By afternoon, the roads would be passable again. He found himself strangely reluctant to think about what that meant. Would Miranda want to return to Red River immediately? Would she want him to take her somewhere else? He pushed the thoughts aside and focused on his chores. When he returned to the cabin an hour later, stamping snow from his boots, he found Miranda awake and sitting up in bed, the blankets clutched around her shoulders. She looked lost and small and vulnerable, and Zachary felt that protective surge rise in him again. "Good morning," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "How are you feeling?" "Alive," she said, and there was a note of surprise in her voice as though she had not expected it. "Warmer." "Confused." "Confused about what?" he asked, pouring 2 cups of coffee and bringing one to her. She accepted it gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm tin cup. "About why I am still here. Yesterday I was so certain that death was the only answer. But now, in the daylight, with you being so kind, I do not know any more. I do not know what to do or where to go." "You do not have to figure it all out right now," Zachary told her. "The storm left everything a mess out there. Why do not you stay here for a few days, recover your strength, and then we can figure out what comes next?" "I could not impose on you like that," Miranda protested. "You have already done so much." "It is not an imposition," he assured her. "Truth is, it gets pretty lonely out here by myself. The company would be nice if you can stand my cooking and lack of conversation." A ghost of a smile crossed her face, the first he had seen from her. It transformed her features, made her beautiful in a way that made his breath catch. "I am not exactly sparkling company right now," she said. "That makes 2 of us," Zachary replied with a slight smile of his own. "We can be dull together." And so Miranda stayed. Those first few days were quiet and tentative. She was still weak, still recovering from her ordeal, and she spent much of her time sleeping or sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. Zachary went about his usual work, checking his cattle, mending fences, doing all the 1,000 tasks that running a ranch required. But he found himself hurrying through his chores, eager to get back to the cabin, to make sure Miranda was all right, to see if maybe that ghost of a smile would appear again. In the evenings, they began to talk. At first, the conversations were superficial and careful. The weather, the ranch, the strange freak storm that had brought snow to Texas. But gradually, tentatively, they began to share more. Miranda told him about her childhood in Red River, about her parents and their small shop, about her dreams of someday traveling beyond Texas, seeing the ocean. Zachary told her about growing up on this very land, about his parents who had built this cabin with their own hands and worked themselves into early graves trying to make the ranch prosper, about his own modest dreams of just keeping the place going, of maybe someday having a family to leave it to. "You never married?" Miranda asked one evening as they sat by the fire, she wrapped in blankets on the bed and he in his usual chair. "Never found the right woman," Zachary admitted. "Or maybe I should say the right woman never found me. I am not much of a catch, I suppose. Just a rancher with more dirt under his nails than money in his pocket." "I think you are a good man," Miranda said softly. "Better than most. You saved my life when you had no reason to. You have shown me more kindness in a few days than some people I have known my whole life." Zachary felt heat rise to his face, unused to such direct praise. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Miranda said firmly. "Most people would have ridden right past me. Some might have stopped out of curiosity, but you stopped out of compassion. There is a difference." He did not know what to say to that, so he just nodded and changed the subject, asking her about a book he had noticed her reading earlier, one of the few books his mother had left behind. But her words stayed with him, warming something in his chest that had been cold for a very long time. As the days turned into a week, then 2 weeks, Miranda grew stronger. She began helping around the cabin, insisting that if she was going to stay, she should at least earn her keep. She cooked, which was a revelation for Zachary, who had been living on basic beans and tough beef for years. She could make the simplest ingredients taste like something special. She cleaned and organized, bringing a woman's touch to the rough cabin. She even came out to help with some of the lighter ranch work, feeding the chickens he kept for eggs, collecting firewood. And as she grew stronger physically, Zachary noticed she was also beginning to heal emotionally. The haunted look in her eyes was fading. She smiled more, and the smiles were real now, not ghosts. She laughed at his dry observations about stubborn cattle and unpredictable weather. She seemed to be finding reasons to live again. Small reasons at first, but reasons nonetheless. For his part, Zachary found himself falling in love, though he tried not to think about it too much. It was in the way his heart lifted when he came in from morning chores and saw her making breakfast. It was in how he caught himself watching her when she did not notice, admiring the way firelight caught in her dark hair, the grace of her movements, the sound of her voice. It was in how the cabin no longer felt empty and lonely but like a home, a real home, for the first time since his parents had died. But he said nothing. Miranda had been through a terrible betrayal, had nearly died from the pain of it. The last thing she needed was some rough rancher declaring feelings she probably did not share and could not return. So Zachary kept his feelings to himself, content for now just to have her presence in his life, even if it was temporary. It was nearly 3 weeks after he had found her in the storm when Miranda brought up the subject they had both been avoiding. They were sitting outside on the porch in the late afternoon sun, unseasonably warm after the freak cold snap. The snow was long gone, and the Texas landscape had returned to its usual winter brown and gold. "I need to go back to Red River," Miranda said suddenly, breaking a comfortable silence. "Or at least, I need to deal with what I left there. The shop, my things. I cannot just pretend none of it exists." Zachary felt his heart sink, but he kept his voice level. "When do you want to go? Would tomorrow be all right?" she asked, looking at him with those green eyes that had haunted his dreams. "I know it is a lot to ask, but would you come with me? I do not think I can face it alone." "Of course," he said immediately. "I will take you wherever you need to go." She reached over and placed her hand on his, and the touch sent electricity through him. "Thank you, Zachary, for everything. I do not know what I would have done without you. Well, actually, I do know. I would be dead. But beyond that, you have given me something I thought I lost forever. Hope, the belief that there are still good people in this world." He turned his hand over, gently clasping hers. "Miranda, you are stronger than you think. You have survived something that would have broken many people. You are going to be just fine, no matter what happens." "I hope you are right," she said softly, and she did not pull her hand away. They sat like that as the sun set, hands clasped, neither speaking, both thinking about what tomorrow would bring. The ride to Red River the next morning took about 3 hours. Miranda was quiet for most of it, growing more tense the closer they got to town. Zachary stayed close beside her, offering silent support. He had been to Red River a few times over the years to buy supplies, but he generally kept to himself and avoided the social aspects of town life. He knew of the Shaw family, knew they owned the biggest ranch in the area, and threw their weight around accordingly. The thought of Matthew Shaw and what he had done to Miranda made Zachary's hands clench on the reins. Red River was a typical Texas town of the era, with a main street lined with wooden buildings, a saloon, a general store, a church, and various other establishments. People moved about their business, and as they rode down the street, Zachary noticed heads turning, whispers starting. Miranda kept her chin up, her back straight, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. They stopped first at a small building on a side street, a modest shop with Sanders General Goods painted on the front. Miranda dismounted and stood staring at it for a long moment before pulling out a key and unlocking the door. Inside, everything was covered in a layer of dust from weeks of being closed. It was a neat, well-organized shop with shelves of dry goods, tools, fabrics, and various necessities. In the back was a small living area where Miranda had clearly been residing. "I need to decide what to do with it," Miranda said, looking around. "I cannot keep running it by myself. I could not even before. Father ran the business side and I just helped. I have been failing at it since he died." "You have options," Zachary said. "You could sell it. You could hire someone to run it. You could close it down. You do not have to decide right now." "I want to sell it," Miranda said decisively. "I do not want anything keeping me tied to this town. Too many bad memories. I will find a buyer, get what I can for it, and then I will figure out what comes next." They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Zachary opened it to find a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and worried expression standing there. "Miranda," the woman said, peering around Zachary. "Oh, my dear, we have all been so worried. Where have you been?" Miranda's expression softened. "Hello, Mrs. Patterson, I am fine. I just needed some time away." Mrs. Patterson bustled in, taking in Miranda's appearance and Zachary's presence with sharp eyes. "We heard you disappeared the night before your wedding. That awful Matthew Shaw has been telling everyone you went mad with wedding nerves and ran off. Some people believe him, but I never did. That boy is no good, I have always said so." "You were right," Miranda said quietly. "He was only marrying me for the shop property. I overheard him with Sarah Miller, laughing about it." Mrs. Patterson's face hardened. "I am not surprised. The Miller girl has been chasing after him for years, and everyone knows Matthew Shaw cares for nothing but money." "I am sorry, dear, but better you found out before the wedding than after." "This is Zachary Lancaster," Miranda introduced. "He saved my life during that storm. I have been recovering at his ranch." Mrs. Patterson looked at Zachary with new interest and approval. A true gentleman, then. We need more of those around here. She turned back to Miranda. What will you do now? Sell the shop, Miranda said. Do you know anyone who might be interested? As a matter of fact, I do, Mrs. Patterson said. My nephew has been wanting to start a business. Let me send him around tomorrow and you two can discuss terms. She patted Miranda's hand. I am glad you are all right, dear. Do not let those awful people make you feel ashamed. You did nothing wrong. After Mrs. Patterson left, several other townspeople stopped by, some out of genuine concern, others out of nosiness. Through it all, Zachary stayed close to Miranda, a silent, supportive presence. He noticed how some people looked at them with speculation, clearly wondering about their relationship. Let them wonder, he thought. He did not care what people thought. As afternoon faded toward evening, Matthew Shaw himself appeared at the shop door. He was a handsome man in his late 20s, with blonde hair and blue eyes and the kind of easy charm that made people trust him. Zachary disliked him on sight. Miranda, Matthew said, his voice smooth as oil. I have been so worried about you. Where have you been? We need to talk about rescheduling the wedding. There will be no wedding, Miranda said, her voice cold and steady. Not now, not ever. I heard you with Sarah, Matthew. I heard everything you said about me. Matthew's face flickered with annoyance before settling back into a concerned expression. You misunderstood, darling. Whatever you think you heard. I heard you laughing about what a fool I was, Miranda cut him off. I heard you say you were only marrying me for the shop property. I heard Sarah say she could not believe you were going through with it. Do not insult my intelligence by pretending it was anything other than what it was. Matthew's expression turned ugly. You are making a mistake, Miranda. No one else in this town will have you. You are damaged goods now, a jilted bride who ran away. Where will you go? What will you do? That is none of your concern, Miranda said, and Zachary heard strength in her voice that made him proud. I am selling the shop and you will get nothing from me. Now please leave. Matthew's eyes shifted to Zachary, who had moved to stand beside Miranda. And who is this? Your new protector. Some dirt-poor rancher you picked up to make me jealous. Zachary kept his temper in check, but it took effort. I am someone who knows how to treat a lady with respect, which is more than you apparently do. Miss Sanders asked you to leave. I suggest you do so. Matthew sneered. You think you are better than me? You are nothing, Lancaster. Everyone knows your family could barely keep that pathetic little ranch going. What can you possibly offer her? More than you ever could, Zachary said quietly. Now get out before I throw you out. For a moment, it looked like Matthew might try something, but he apparently thought better of it. He turned back to Miranda. You will regret this, both of you. Then he stalked out, slamming the door behind him. Miranda let out a breath she had been holding. That went better than I expected, she said, and there was a slight tremor in her voice. I thought I would be more afraid, but I just felt angry and relieved. You were magnificent, Zachary said, and meant it. You stood up to him without flinching. I had you standing beside me, Miranda said, looking up at him. That made all the difference. Their eyes met and held, and Zachary felt the moment stretch between them, charged with something he did not dare name. He wanted to kiss her, wanted to tell her everything he had been feeling, but the shop door opened again, and the moment broke. It was a young man this time, who introduced himself as Daniel Patterson, Mrs. Patterson's nephew. They spent the next hour discussing the shop, and by the end of it, a deal had been struck. Daniel would buy the shop and its inventory for a fair price, giving Miranda enough money to start fresh wherever she wanted. The papers would be drawn up by the town lawyer the next day. As they left the shop and headed to the small hotel to get rooms for the night, Miranda was quiet but seemed lighter somehow, as though a weight had been lifted. They got separate rooms, though Zachary wished circumstances were different. He lay in the unfamiliar bed that night, thinking about Miranda just on the other side of the wall, wondering what the future held for both of them. The next morning, they met with the lawyer, signed the papers, and Miranda officially became free of her past in Red River. She had a banker's draft for a substantial sum and nothing tying her to the town anymore. As they mounted their horses to leave, she looked back at the town one last time. "Any regrets?" Zachary asked. "Not a single one," Miranda replied. "I am ready to move forward now, to start fresh." "Have you thought about where you will go?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual even though his heart was pounding. "What you will do?" Miranda looked at him, and there was something in her eyes he had not seen before. Something that looked like affection, maybe even love. "I was hoping you might have some ideas about that," she said softly. They rode back toward his ranch in the golden afternoon light, and this time, the silence between them was full of possibility. When they arrived back at the cabin, Zachary helped Miranda down from her horse, his hands lingering on her waist perhaps longer than necessary. She did not pull away. "Miranda," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "these past weeks with you here have been the best of my life. This cabin has not felt like home since my parents died, but with you in it, it feels right. Complete. I know you have been through a terrible time and maybe this is too soon, and I will understand if you do not feel the same way, but I have to tell you, I love you. I have fallen completely and utterly in love with you." Miranda's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "It is not too soon," she whispered. "Zachary, you saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You showed me that I could trust again, that not all men are like Matthew Shaw. You made me want to live again. I love you too. I think I have been falling in love with you since that first night when you refused to let me die." He pulled her into his arms and she came willingly, pressing herself against him. "Stay with me," he said. "Not as a guest, not as someone just recovering from a bad situation. Stay with me as my wife if you will have me. I do not have much to offer. This ranch is small, the work is hard, and you would never have the fine things someone like Matthew Shaw could have provided. But I will love you with everything I have, every day for the rest of my life." "I do not want fine things," Miranda said, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "I want a good man with a kind heart. I want someone who sees me as more than just a means to an end. I want you, Zachary. Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I will stay." He kissed her then, a kiss that was gentle at first but quickly deepened with the passion they had both been holding back. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "We should do it right," he said. "Let me court you properly first. I want you to be sure to have no doubts." "I have no doubts," Miranda assured him. "But I understand. We can take whatever time you think we need." But as it turned out, neither of them wanted to wait long. They were married 6 weeks later by the circuit preacher who came through the area. It was a simple ceremony with just a few neighboring ranchers as witnesses, nothing like the grand wedding Miranda had almost had in Red River. But it was perfect, full of genuine love and joy and promise. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, both of them nervous but eager. Zachary was gentle with Miranda, taking his time, making sure she felt cherished and loved. They fit together perfectly, and afterward, lying in each other's arms in the darkness, they talked about their hopes and dreams for the future. "I want children," Miranda said softly. "At least 2 or 3 if we are blessed with them. I want this cabin to be full of laughter and love." "I want that too," Zachary agreed, running his fingers through her hair. "And I want to expand the ranch, make it into something our children can be proud of, something we can pass down to them." "We will do it together," Miranda said. "All of it together." And they did. Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. The ranch work was indeed hard, and there were times when money was tight. But they faced everything together, supporting each other through difficulties and celebrating the good times. Miranda proved to be stronger than even she had known, working alongside Zachary with determination and skill. She learned to rope and brand cattle, to mend fences, to do all the 1,000 tasks that ranch life required. And Zachary learned to be a partner in every sense of the word, valuing Miranda's opinions and ideas, sharing decisions with her, treating her as an equal rather than as a subordinate. Their first child came in the spring of 1885, a healthy baby boy they named John, after Zachary's father. Zachary wept when he first held his son, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. Miranda had been strong through the long labor, attended by a midwife from a neighboring ranch, and seeing her with their child made Zachary fall in love with her all over again. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered, staring down at the tiny face. "You are perfect. How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Miranda said, exhausted but radiant. "We found each other when we needed each other most." John was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Emma, after Miranda's mother. Emma had Miranda's green eyes and Zachary's dark hair, and she was spirited from the very beginning. 2 years after Emma came another son, Samuel, who was quiet and thoughtful like his father. As their family grew, so did the ranch. Zachary worked hard, and Miranda's business sense, inherited from her shopkeeper father, helped them make smart decisions about when to buy more cattle, when to sell, how to expand wisely. They built additions onto the cabin, turning it into a proper house with multiple bedrooms. They hired help during busy seasons, treating their hands fairly and earning a reputation as good employers. The years passed in a blur of work and love and laughter. Their children grew strong and healthy, learning the ranch alongside their parents. John inherited his father's way with animals and his mother's head for business. Emma was fearless and independent, able to outride most of the ranch hands by the time she was 12. Samuel was the gentle one, always ready with a kind word or a helping hand for anyone who needed it. Miranda and Zachary grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They had their disagreements, of course. No marriage is perfect. But they had learned to communicate, to work through problems together, to never go to bed angry. The passion between them never faded, even as their hair turned gray and lines appeared on their faces. They still looked at each other across the dinner table with love in their eyes, still held hands while walking around the ranch, still made time for stolen kisses when the children were not looking. Sometimes, on quiet evenings after the children were in bed, they would sit together on the porch and remember that day in the snowstorm so many years ago. "I still thank God I was on that trail that day," Zachary would say. "What if I had taken a different route? What if I had not stopped?" "But you did," Miranda would reply. "You stopped and you saved me and you changed everything. You gave me a life I never could have imagined. You gave me love and family and purpose. You gave me everything." They heard occasional news from Red River over the years. Matthew Shaw had married Sarah Miller after all, and by all accounts, it had been a miserable union that ended in a bitter divorce after 5 years. Matthew's father had lost much of the family fortune through bad investments, and Matthew himself had developed a drinking problem. Miranda felt no satisfaction in hearing this, only a distant pity for the life he had wasted through his own selfishness and greed. When John turned 18, he began courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sweet girl named Catherine with freckles and an infectious laugh. They were married the following year, and John brought his bride to live on the ranch. In a new house, Zachary and Miranda helped them build on a corner of the property. It was a joy to see their son so happy, to watch him building his own life and family. Emma, true to her independent nature, surprised everyone by announcing at 19 that she wanted to go east to school, to study literature and writing. It broke Miranda's heart a little to see her daughter leave, but she and Zachary gave their blessing and the money for tuition. Emma wrote long letters about her adventures, about the places she was seeing and the things she was learning, and eventually she met a young lawyer from Boston and brought him home to meet her parents. He was a good man who clearly adored Emma, and when they married, they settled in Dallas, close enough to visit but far enough for Emma to have her independence. Samuel stayed on the ranch, working alongside his father and brother, and eventually married a quiet girl from the church they attended in the nearest town. They added their own house to the growing Lancaster compound, and soon grandchildren began arriving, filling the ranch with new life and noise. By the time Zachary was in his 60s, the ranch had grown into one of the most successful operations in the region. It was not the biggest, but it was well run and profitable, employing several families and supporting multiple generations of Lancasters. Zachary and Miranda moved into a smaller house they built for themselves, leaving the big house to John and his growing family. But they were still active on the ranch, still contributing, still very much part of the daily life. One evening in early spring of 1903, 20 years after that fateful snowstorm, Zachary and Miranda were sitting on their porch watching the sunset. Grandchildren were playing in the yard, their laughter floating on the warm breeze. John was working with some cattle in a nearby pen. Samuel was mending a fence line visible in the distance. It was an ordinary evening, perfect in its ordinariness. "You remember when this was just us?" Miranda asked, leaning against Zachary's shoulder. "Just you and me in that tiny cabin, working so hard just to get by." "I remember," Zachary said, putting his arm around her. "And you know what? I would do it all again, every difficult day, every challenge, just to end up here with you. Even finding me in that snowstorm, hearing me tell you to let me die," Miranda asked. "Especially that," Zachary said firmly. "Because it brought you into my life, because it gave us all of this." He gestured at the scene before them, the ranch, the houses, the family. "You said once that I saved you, but Miranda, you saved me too. I was just existing before you, just going through the motions. You gave my life meaning and purpose. You gave me love." Miranda kissed him softly. "We saved each other then. Two broken people who found exactly what they needed in each other." "Not broken," Zachary corrected gently. "You were never broken, just hurt, and look at you now. Strong, beautiful, loved by so many. You built yourself back up, became even more than you were before." "We built together," Miranda insisted. "Everything we have, everything we are, we did it together." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. The evening star appeared, bright and steady. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed. One of the grandchildren squealed with laughter. The smell of cooking dinner drifted from John's house. "I love you," Miranda said softly. "After all these years, I love you more than ever." "And I love you," Zachary replied. "More than words can say. You are my heart, Miranda. You always will be." As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, they remained on the porch, holding each other, surrounded by the life they had built together. It had started with a desperate woman in a snowstorm and a stubborn cowboy who refused to let her die. It had grown into a love story that spanned decades, a partnership that had weathered every storm and celebrated every joy. It was a life well lived, a love well earned, and they were grateful for every moment of it. The years continued to pass gently after that evening. Zachary and Miranda aged with grace, their love for each other never wavering. They became the heart of the family, the wise elders that children and grandchildren came to for advice, for stories, for comfort. Their love story became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as an example of what true love could be. When they were in their early 70s, Zachary's health began to decline. His heart was failing, the doctor said, worn out from a lifetime of hard work and hard living. But he faced it with the same calm courage he had faced everything else in his life. Miranda never left his side, caring for him with the same fierce devotion he had shown her that long-ago night in the snowstorm. One evening, as they sat together in their room with the family gathered around, Zachary looked at Miranda with eyes that still held all the love of their youth. "I am not afraid," he told her softly. "I have had a good life, a full life. I have been loved by the best woman I ever knew. I have no regrets." "Neither do I," Miranda said, tears streaming down her face but her voice steady. "You gave me everything, Zachary, everything I never dared dream of. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for loving me. It was my honor," he whispered, "and my joy, every single day." He passed peacefully that night, surrounded by the family he had built, with Miranda's hand in his. The grief was profound, but so was the gratitude for the life they had shared. Miranda made sure he was buried on the ranch he had loved, under an oak tree where they used to sit and watch the sunset together. Miranda lived for 5 more years after Zachary's death, remaining active and engaged with her family until the very end. She spent her days helping with the grandchildren, managing the business side of the ranch, tending her garden, and writing letters to Emma. She spoke often of Zachary, keeping his memory alive for the younger generations who had never known him in his prime. When Miranda's own time came, it was peaceful. She went to sleep one night in the spring of 1911 and simply did not wake up. Her family laid her to rest beside Zachary under that oak tree, reuniting them in death as they had been united in life. The headstone reads simply, "Zachary Lancaster and Miranda Lancaster. They saved each other." The ranch continued to thrive under John's management and would stay in the Lancaster family for generations to come. But more than the land or the cattle or the money, the true legacy of Zachary and Miranda was the love they had shared, the family they had built, and the story of 2 people who had found each other at their lowest moment and had lifted each other up to heights neither could have reached alone. Years later, their great-grandchildren would sit under that same oak tree and hear the story of how their great-grandfather had found their great-grandmother freezing in a snowstorm, how she had begged him to let her die, and how he had refused. They would hear about the love that had grown from that desperate moment, about the life that had been built on a foundation of compassion and devotion and unwavering commitment. And they would learn that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is refuse to give up on them, even when they have given up on themselves. They would learn that true love is not just passion and romance, though those are important. True love is also showing up every day, working side by side, facing challenges together, choosing each other again and again through good times and bad. True love is what Zachary and Miranda had, what they built, what they left behind as their greatest gift. The snowstorm that had brought them together had long since melted into memory, but its effects rippled forward through time in the lives of their descendants. Every Lancaster child grew up knowing they came from love, real love, the kind that changes lives and builds legacies. They grew up knowing that even in your darkest moment, when all hope seems lost, salvation might be just around the corner in the form of someone who cares enough to refuse to let you fall. And on cold winter nights, when snow occasionally fell on the Texas plains, the Lancaster family would gather by the fire and remember. They would remember the cowboy who found a woman freezing in a snowstorm, who heard her say, "Let me die," but who had other plans, better plans. Plans that included love and life and a future full of hope. Plans that started with a simple refusal to give up and ended with a legacy that would last forever. The ranch house still stood, expanded and modernized over the decades, but still recognizably the same place where it had all begun. The oak tree remained a gathering place for family events, weddings, celebrations. And beneath it, Zachary and Miranda rested together, their mortal journey complete, but their love immortalized in the family they had created, and the story that would be told for generations to come. It was a story of rescue and redemption, of healing and hope, of two wounded souls who had found exactly what they needed in each other. It was proof that even in the harshest conditions, even in the darkest despair, love can bloom and flourish and create something beautiful that lasts forever. It was the story of Zachary and Miranda Lancaster, and it would never be forgotten.